Newsflash, if you want a PC VR setup, they are stupid cheap right now. I'm talking like 60, 70 bucks. There are caveats, and we'll get to those, but this is the real deal. For some context, Windows Mixed Reality was a VR standard that Microsoft pushed for back in 2017 to 2020. Basically, they made the software platform and other manufacturers would make the hardware. It never really took off, and Microsoft more or less bricked all of the headsets last year by removing the mixed reality support from Windows. But recently, a Microsoft employee independently developed and released the Oasis driver, which makes the headsets almost plug and play with Steam VR. You can get them up and running in minutes, meaning that all of those headsets that people started selling off for peanuts because it didn't work anymore suddenly work again. So what do you need for this? Well, compatibility is a bit specific right now. The short version is that if you're on Windows 11 and you have an NVIDIA GPU, then you're good. At the time of writing, support for AMD GPUs is a bit of a work in progress, so do your research if you have one of those. Windows 10 isn't officially supported, but it's what I'm using and it mostly works fine for me, aside from sometimes locking up my computer when I plug the headset in. Your mileage may vary on that, and you definitely shouldn't submit bug reports or anything if you aren't on 11. You also need Bluetooth, but it doesn't really matter how you make that happen. Motherboard Bluetooth or most dongles should be fine. Just know that the integrated Bluetooth that some of these headsets have will not work here. I'm going to elaborate on this a lot, but I'll cut to the chase and say that if you're mainly interested in seated VR or you just want to play a few specific PC games, this may genuinely be a good option for you. It also might not. I'm not going to mince words, there are reasons that this whole platform died out, but for these prices, shoot, they can be pretty good. If you want to pick up a mixed reality headset, you're going to have a lot of choices. All of them work, but some are much better than others. I recommend checking the Wikipedia page for a good write-up, but the short version is that you probably want a Samsung Odyssey or an HP Reverb. Ideally, the Odyssey Plus or Reverb G2. These have the best displays, good built-in headphones, and better controllers than the rest. The other ones are fine, like they work, but these are the ones to aim for. I got my Odyssey Plus here with controllers for a whopping $63.59. It was listed by the seller as not working because it only displayed a black screen when they plugged it in, but they apparently didn't realize that it's supposed to do that when nothing is running, and it's actually totally fine. So I did save a little bit of money doing that, but even if you buy one that's listed as working, it's not going to cost that much more, probably because until recently, they also didn't work. As far as the headset goes, I'm very happy with it. The resolution is noticeably lower than on my Quest 2, but the field of view is wider and the color is astronomically better. This is an OLED display. That means colors are vibrant, the whites are bright, and most importantly, you get true blacks. You don't get those with the Quest 2 or 3, which have LCD screens that make dark scenes a nasty kind of gray. So while it isn't as sharp as those, I actually prefer the image quality of this. The HP Reverb has resolution comparable to the Quest 3, but that's also LCD, and man, that's more pixels than 4K. Your VR budget is under $100, you're not running that. The built-in headphones are also quite welcome. They're comfortable and they sound good. Using regular headphones on top of an HMD is always really cumbersome and it just kind of feels bad to me, so having them built in is a big plus. Headset tracking is also perfectly fine. I was worried that it'd be an issue with tech this old, but as long as you have decent lighting, it doesn't really feel any worse than the Quest. The controllers, on the other hand, we'll get back to the controllers. Alright, pros and cons for mixed reality as a whole compared to other options. The big one is obviously that it's cheap. It's really cheap. You can find lightly used Quest 2s for around 150 bucks, and that is still a good value, but there's really no beating just how little mixed reality headsets are going for right now. I mean, assuming this video doesn't do too well. Sorry if it does. Even just looking at eBay while I'm recording here, I'm seeing them listed for like 45, 50, 60 bucks. You're not spending much on these things. Another plus is that it's all very simple. After setup, you pretty much just plug it in, start Steam VR, and put it on your head. The headsets use inside-out tracking, so there aren't any base stations to worry about. There's no messing around with Quest Link or a converter box like PSVR 2 has. You can't use it wirelessly, but that also means there's no battery to worry about and no video compression making it look worse than it should. It is as straightforward as it could possibly be. And as I mentioned, the actual headsets can still be reasonably competitive with many current options. If you're playing a flight sim or a driving game, really anything that just uses the headset, you're not going to be wishing you had something else. That said, the controllers are not good. In fact, they kinda suck. This was the early days of inside-out tracking, and while the headsets hold up well in that regard, the controllers absolutely do not. Occlusion is the word of the day. The controllers can only be tracked while in the view of the headset's cameras, so there is effectively a cone in front of you where they can be seen, and beyond that, all bets are off. Rule of thumb, if you can't see your hand in game, the tracking is just winging it. Using anything two-handed can be finicky as well if one controller is blocking the other. The controllers also feature awful battery consumption, strangely high voltage requirements, and a bizarre layout that some games just do not natively support. These are from the Wild West period of VR controller design, so instead of the two face buttons that we're used to now, the analog stick is accompanied by a trackpad. So that's odd. It isn't the end of the world though. Steam VR lets you rebind things as needed, and most of the time you can just use the first community layout you see and you'll be good to go. The Reverb controllers use a more typical layout and are interoperable with other headsets, so those are also an option if it's still a problem. Point being, the controllers are by far the weakest link with Windows mixed reality. For what it's worth, they can usually get the job done in most games. You definitely feel the compromise, but it's certainly not unplayable. But if you want to play something like Beat Saber or Blade and Sorcery... All of that being said, I put my Odyssey Plus through its paces in a variety of games just to see how it would fare. First, a few seeded games. Star Wars Squadrons, Project Wingman, and Project Cars. The project thing is a coincidence, I didn't plan for that. These cover the ideal use case for these setups. Space games, flight games, driving games, anything where you're just using the headset with an external controller. These were all excellent experiences. With the VR controllers out of the picture, the experience is just as good as with a more premium option. In fact, compared to the Quest 2 or 3S, I think it's better, and I feel no desire to switch back for these types of games. I'm just saying, Squadrons and Project Wingman with an OLED screen and a HOTAS? That is some good stuff. Of course, I also had to try VTOL VR, my beloved. This game does use the controllers, which makes it a bit more mixed. It's fine like 95% of the time, but if you're tracking a target with your head or something, then your throttle hand can sometimes exit the tracking area and stop responding. You don't have to worry about it for the flight stick though, that's just based on your controller's rotation, so it keeps working even when spatial tracking is lost. When it comes to standing or room scale games, things get shakier. Cord length varies between headsets, so full room scale may be off the table depending on which one you buy and what your computer setup looks like. You can extend them, but it can get finicky depending on how you do that. As far as the games go, the obvious question is Half-Life Alyx, and it works completely fine. Pretty well, even. Alyx feels like it was designed with the limited controller tracking in mind, so it was never a problem in the hour that I played. It's also an extremely dark game sometimes, so that OLED screen on the Odyssey goes a long way in making it look nicer than it does on some other headsets. If you buy one of these headsets to play Half-Life Alyx, it will not let you down. You're gonna have a good experience with it. Speaking of, Half-Life 2 VR also works decently well on here. It's not perfect like Alyx is, since aiming two-handed guns opens the door to occasional tracking weirdness, but on the whole, the controllers get the job done just fine. I highly recommend this mod, by the way. It's fantastic and absolutely worth replaying Half-Life 2 with. It's by far the best VR mod I've played. Hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades is where the controller limitations start to feel palpable. You absolutely can enjoy it, but rifles are a bit harder to use with this tracking, and the massive controller rings make loading weapons extremely awkward at times. On the bright side, the weird layout is actually kinda perfect for this. You get full touchpad controls as intended with dedicated sticks for movement, so you don't have to use simplified controls like on Quest. I have them on the Oculus store so I couldn't test them, but I don't think Boneworks or Bone Lab would work well with these controllers. Those just demand way too much for this tracking. As mentioned, Beat Saber and Blade and Sorcery are probably also too far. Rule of thumb, if melee is a big factor or you need to do things without looking, you'll want something better than this. But all things considered, if you're into simulations and you don't already have VR, I think this can be a great buy. For your purposes, a good mixed reality headset's going to be comparable to, or possibly even better than, much more expensive alternatives. If you can find a good one for under 80 bucks or so, it's honestly worth picking one up just to see if you like it. If you're looking to play a handful of PC VR games and you don't want it to become an investment, then this might be a good option for you too. But if the tracking is a deal breaker, or you want to get into VR more generally, then I would suggest saving a bit more and picking up something like a Quest 2 or 3S. Those can still do PC VR and have good enough tracking for just about anything. Plus you get access to all of the games in the Quest ecosystem. You can find lightly used ones for $150 to $200 if you look around. Or I guess you could be like me and just buy both. You probably don't need both. It's time for the credits Q&A, and by Q&A I mean question and answer, because I just got the one. How much time do you typically put into a game before you decide if it has clicked with you or not? Possibly too much, if I'm being honest. Unless a game is like spectacularly boring or just genuinely awful, it's hard to get me to drop anything. I will cling on to a maybe until the credits roll, which is good and bad, I guess. Some of my favorite games are ones that took me a while to come around on, but you know, sometimes you just don't. I'm just gonna crash into him. Oh! Alright, sure!